Neo, take the red pill. Today we're talking about the theory that life is a simulation and where that comes from. A lot of people credit this idea to Descartes with his evil genius model back in the 1600s. And that's right, for those of you who thought the simulation theory was brand new and had to do with computers, Descartes' the one who said that we have no way to prove that we're not just some brain in a vat or something of that nature, where there's some other evil genius, malicious demon, something feeding us images that make us think the world is real. And his point in that entire exercise was just the fact that there's no way to prove or disprove that. So that's not what we're going to be doing in this video. This is not a video pro the world being a simulation. This is not a video against the world being a simulation. But my argument in this video is that this concept is actually even older than Descartes. This concept is as old as religion itself. And I'll explain that right now. So most religions believe in two worlds, a sort of spiritual world and the physical world. Sometimes there's multiple spiritual worlds, sometimes there's one, sometimes there's a heaven and a hell, all that good stuff. Sometimes it's the underworld. I'm getting carried away with myself. The point being, there's two worlds. There's the physical world we all inhabit now, and there's the spiritual world where there's spirits or gods or a god or something that impresses its will upon this world. And that's the key. The idea of these two separate worlds where one is impressing upon the other indicates that this second world, which we always in these religions assume is our own, is the lesser of the two worlds. In other words, it's a reality built for the purposes of this reality, or a simulation. So in my view, this is why so many people find it easy to believe in this simulation theory. It's because a lot of people already believe it in a religious sense, or even when they've left religion, it's an easy thing to swing into because this concept, this perspective, has already existed for a while. But why do we have this view, this belief that there's some other world? We have no proof of another world, but yet the people of the past definitely seem to believe it wholeheartedly. And a lot of people give a lot of credence to tradition. But what were they talking about? Well, people in the days past actually believed that when you dreamed or when you had visions, whether those be by hallucinogenic substances or otherwise, that you were traveling somewhere else. You weren't just having some experience in your mind, you were actually going somewhere. They didn't have the concepts of the way the brain works to think of it as just having something happen in your mind back in the great, great old days. They just knew that, hey, I was here, and now I'm somewhere else. And that's how they expressed it in all of their writing and everything else. When we go back and read that stuff with modern view, we somehow assume that everybody's talking with the same knowledge we have now. That's not the case. They're just talking about dreams. So if you believe that when you dream you're going somewhere that's not here, then you have to believe there's a somewhere that's not here. And it makes sense whenever you dream and you can see people who have expired or passed from this world in those dreams, that it must be the spirit world. And what's interesting is there's some value to that. And the value is if you start to look at the fact that you exist here, but then can also exist in this dream state, and you actually pay enough attention to that, you start to notice how the consciousness is not body specific, how a lot of what we consider ourselves to be is a game or a put on that we put on top, a layer we kind of put on top of ourselves. And that's why a lot of this type of thinking led to religions and philosophies and things, these great thoughts about the self and the meaning of consciousness. And those thoughts are valuable, and the things you can learn from that are valuable. So I'm not in any way saying, throw that in the trash. No, it's great. It's a good exercise. But there's no proof for this secondary world. And that's what you need to prove a simulation theory. Now, you can't unprove it. Just as Descartes said, you can't prove or disprove this. So I'm not trying to. I'm not saying the world's not a simulation for these reasons. It could be. It could be a simulation. There could be gods, deities, a god, whatever. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying that most of this viewpoint comes from early humanity viewing dreams as one world and reality as another, and having that early recognition that this subconscious world of dreams affects this world in some way. And I would say societally, though some people think it's an even stronger connection, and that's where the different types of religions and thought processes and philosophies come from. Now, to me, what feels fake to people and what helps them to be pulled into this way of thinking is society itself. And that's because society is just rules we made up. If you really think about it, Humans got together. Think about how kids get together. A bunch of kids get together and they all have their own individual ideas of what they want to play. And if they're too individualistic, the other kids aren't going to play with them because they're not willing to compromise. But if they do a compromise and they change a little bit about what they're going to do, and all the kids do that, and they all kind of come to an agreement about what the rules are going to be for the game they're playing, then all of a sudden they're all playing together and they're having a good time. And they're able to do stuff that they can't do on their own. When you do that on a bigger and bigger scale, and it changes from play to things to get through the day, like tribal economies and things like that, and then eventually nation economies and stuff like that. Then the societal rules and these traditions that go from one generation to another are all built up just to allow a massive number of players to play the same game to get the results that the tribe or nation or group or humanity as a whole is looking for. So that is absolutely a simulation. It's made up rules we made up so that we can all work together as a team instead of fending for ourselves. That's society. So if you're someone who's grown up in relative comfort and you haven't had to go out into nature and you haven't had to worry about just natural forces affecting your life, you've lived relatively peacefully happy lives in the modern society in a first world country, you probably think, for the most part, of society as the world. That's the thing that you're concentrating on. You're not looking at the natural nature and stuff going on in the background as much. And if you get too caught up in that and then start to see the cracks in it, you can start to go, wait, none of it's real. Nothing is real. No. None of that society stuff is real. It's all made up. It's all us agreeing to do something. But that nature stuff, if you go back out in the woods and you have an experience out there, it's going to be different. When your world is turned upside down by forces that you don't control, like a hurricane, or in current days, this virus going around, it helps to give you that understanding that nature itself is not the same type of game as society. And if you're someone who grew up with hardship, you just know this already. You listen to people saying their things about do this positivity stuff and everything just works out, and you're like, ha, that's funny. That stuff works for society because society's got its own rules that can be manipulated and pulled on like puppet strings. So it's easy if you're caught up in the society constant stuff to start going, wait, is the whole world a simulation? Because all of society is a simulation. And so you're seeing this thing, but you haven't quite seen the whole picture yet. Could the whole world be a simulation? Sure. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that what you're feeling and noticing is that society is a game that we're playing. And that doesn't actually show what's going on in the world as a whole. It's just society, nations, neighbors, people. It's the stuff of humans. It's what humans do. It's human social behaviors. It's a very, very human-specific thing. And that's the way to get yourself out of going, oh man, this is everything. Look at some animals. Pay attention to the way animals behave. See how different it is. See that these things you're noticing are human-centric. And you'll realize that all you're noticing is that humans are crazy and can't help but to play these wild games with each other, and somehow those games build on top of each other to build all this massive infrastructure and stuff that we've been able to do. It's the thing that sets us apart from other animals on this planet, is that we can play games to the point where we build things beyond ourselves. I want to thank my Circle of Magi out there. You guys are great. I want to thank my patrons. I want to thank everybody watching this. And I want to say, what do you think about the idea of the world being a simulation? What do you think about the idea of society being a game? What are your thoughts on this? And before I get too much hate about comparing religious thinking in this, I get that it's easy to see the God controlling the world thing as the simulation, but it's kind of harder to put in place if you're a pantheist or something who believes that everything has a soul, but it's all here and now. Not all religions fit into this model. I'm just saying this ahead before everybody jumps down my throat. But you still can. I'll still find it funny. Until next time, safe travels.